No one in that courtroom was ready. The lawyers weren't ready. The judge wasn't ready. And Diddy, he definitely wasn't ready. Because when Cassie's hidden audio began to play, crackling over the courtroom speakers like a ghost rising, from the past, time stood still. The jury leaned in. The reporters froze mid-type. And Diddy, his entire face changed. The voice on the tape was hers. Soft, emotional. But what she was saying? It wasn't just testimony. It was confession, memory, evidence. And as it echoed through the courtroom, every word peeled back the curtain on a life people only thought they understood. I was scared. Cassie's voice said, shaking, real. But I kept the audio just in case. And now here it was, right in the middle of the trial. Day 4, unexpected, unannounced, and absolutely explosive. You could feel the shift in the room. Even the judge looked shaken. But the most unforgettable moment, when Diddy stood up mid-playback, eyes wide, lips trembling, and shouted, "This is out of context!" before storming out of the room in front of everyone. Security followed, cameras clicked, and the internet, it lit up like a match to gasoline, though, because now the world wasn't just watching. It was listening. It was supposed to be a regular day in court. Just another long session in a trial that had already drawn enough attention to light up every media outlet in the country. Cameras outside, sketch artists inside, reporters filing notes faster than the judge could speak. But no one, absolutely no one, expected what was about to unfold. Cassie arrived that morning with her usual calm, a soft beige coat, minimal makeup, eyes hidden behind oversized black sunglasses. She walked past the flashing bulbs like a shadow, quiet, graceful, unreadable. Some fans even said she looked too calm, like she knew something everyone else didn't. And maybe she did, because tucked inside her leather bag, next to a printed statement and a worn-out tissue, was a tiny flash drive. Nothing fancy, just a basic drive, small and black, with a single piece of tape wrapped around it. On that tape, written in blue pen, "Do not play unless it happens again." By noon, the courtroom was already tense. Diddy's legal team had spent the morning trying to paint Cassie as confused, emotional, and struggling with memory distortion. They spoke in calm voices, carefully chosen words, acting like this wasn't one of the most high-profile cases in recent history. But Cassie sat still, hands in her lap, eyes forward, waiting. And when her lawyer stood up and said, "Your Honor, we have additional evidence to present," the room shifted. You could feel it in the air. Even the judge blinked twice, lips tightening slightly. "Additional evidence? What kind?" the lawyer replied. "An audio recording, recorded privately by the witness at the time of one of the key incidents discussed in testimony." Diddy's lawyer shut up. "Your Honor, this was not disclosed there." But Cassie's lawyer cut in. "It was withheld for her safety. She only decided to share it today." The judge stared for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Play the recording." And just like that, it began. A low hiss, a pause, and then her voice, soft, scared, shaking. "I'm recording this just in case," the voice said. "Because if anything happens to me, someone needs to know." The courtroom froze. It wasn't just Cassie talking. It was Cassie from the past, a woman terrified but brave enough to hold on to her truth. Her words described a night one fans had only heard mentioned in vague terms. She talked about yelling, about threats, about being followed in her own house. And then came the moment that cracked everything open. Cassie's voice on the recording. "He said, 'No one will believe you anyway. I made you.'" A gasp echoed across the courtroom. Even the court reporter looked up. Diddy shifted in his seat. His jaw moved. His eyes narrowed. And then Cassie's voice continued. "So I'm recording this, not for a lawsuit, not for attention, just for my own safety." Diddy stood up. His chair scraped the floor. "This is out of context," he said loudly. "Oh, this is not what it sounds like." The judge raised a hand. "Mr. Combs, please." But Diddy wasn't done. "She's twisting everything. That's not even from the night they're saying." Cassie didn't flinch. She just stared ahead, like she knew this moment would come. The judge ordered silence. Mr. Combs, if you cannot remain seated, you will need to leave the courtroom. And then it happened. Diddy looked around, nostrils flared, chest rising and falling fast, and he stormed out. Just like that. No words, no explanations, just gone security. Trailed behind him, his lawyer scrambled to gather papers. The court fell into a buzz. Half whispers, half stunned silence. Cassie's lawyer paused the audio. Your Honor, he said calmly, there's more. The judge nodded, eyes sharper now. We'll resume after a 15-minute recess. And that's when the real storm hit. Outside the courtroom, news vans doubled. Inside social media, it exploded. Diddy storms out after Cassie drops bombshell audio. Cassie's voice cracks, but her story doesn't. Courtroom chaos as audio proves everything fans suspected. The internet was now fully engaged. Clips of the moment were uploaded from sketch artists, lip readers, and even courtroom insiders. People argued over what he whispered before walking out. Some said it was she lied. Others claimed it was this is all fake. Either way, the world had seen it live, or felt like they had. And backstage, Diddy's team was scrambling. Insiders leaked to blogs that Diddy was shaken, but standing strong. That he would return to court tomorrow, and that the recording is being reviewed by experts for authenticity. But for the public, it was too late. Cassie had done something no one expected. She didn't just tell her truth, she played it. And in that moment, every doubter, every skeptic, every critic who once said she's doing this for money or she's just bitter went quiet, because they heard her. And you can't unhear the truth. After recess, Cassie returned. Same expression, calm, steady, but something was different. This time, she wasn't testifying. She was witnessing, watching, because now her words were finally speaking for her. And fans, they weren't just shocked. They were ready for more. When their courtroom doors opened again, the energy had changed. The judge re-entered. The attorneys took their positions. The murmurs settled, but still one seat remained empty. Diddy hadn't come back. Cameras caught the sideways glances, the quiet whispers between court officials. No one said it outright, but the silence screamed, this wasn't just a walkout, this was a retreat. Cassie sat still, poised, like someone who had been waiting years for this moment. And finally it was here. Her lawyer stood again. Your Honor, with your permission, we'd like to resume playback of the recording. The judge gave a slight nod and the room tensed. As the next clip began, the atmosphere shifted. There was no music, no dramatic editing, just raw, shaky audio. Cassie's voice, more distant this time, was heard arguing with someone whose voice wasn't clearly captured. But the tone, that was unmistakable. Don't raise your voice, Cassie said in the clip, nervous but defiant. You're scaring me, a low, angry response followed, muffled but sharp, followed by Cassie, saying, I said no, I don't want to go with you tonight. And then a slam, maybe a door, maybe something heavier. In the courtroom, a few people visibly shifted in their seats. The judge raised a brow, leaned slightly forward. Cassie's voice on the tape dropped lower. This is why I'm recording, because no one sees this side of you. Only I do. Her words weren't dramatic. They weren't even angry. They were exhausted, numb, like someone used to surviving, not fighting. The audio cut off. Silence filled the room once again. And then Cassie's lawyer said, that concludes the recording, Your Honor. The judge took a long breath. But silence didn't last long, because right then Diddy's attorney stood up. His face was tight. His hands gripped the sides of the podium. Your Honor, we believe this recording is inadmissible. Cassie's lawyer raised a brow. On what grounds? Lack of context, the attorney said. We don't know when this was recorded, who was present, or the mental state of the witness. The judge looked unimpressed. You'll have a chance to challenge the validity. For now, the jury will consider it. And just like that, it was official. Cassie's voice was now part of the official record. News broke instantly. Every entertainment blog, court TV network, and gossip channel flooded with the same headline. Cassie's secret recording admitted as evidence. Diddy and No-Show fan pages posted reactions non-stop. Some showed old clips of Diddy acting controlling on interviews. Others pulled footage from award shows where Cassie looked uncomfortable. Everything was being reanalyzed, every moment rewatched with new eyes. And then came the fans, people who had doubted her, who had dismissed her. Now they were apologizing, reposting, showing support. One comment that went viral said, "We owe Cassie the biggest apology of the decade, and I hope she gets justice." Another wrote, "He built an empire off silence. Now her voice is burning it down." And the reactions didn't stop there. A few other celebrities, carefully at first, started weighing in. A well-known R&B singer posted a tweet saying, "I remember the stories, the warning signs. I just never thought she'd be the one brave." Enough to say it. Cassie didn't respond. She didn't need to, because while the world debated and dissected and defended, she was already inside the next courtroom session, quietly watching her team prepare the next set of evidence. But where was Diddy? Reports began circulating that he had left the city. Some claimed he was emotionally overwhelmed. Others said he was conferring with crisis management. A few insiders even whispered that he might not return at all, but Cassie didn't. I blinked because she knew what was coming next. Her legal team was now moving to introduce text messages, screenshots, statements, and this time, it wasn't her voice doing the damage, it was his. In a sealed envelope handed carefully to the judge were a series of messages recovered from Cassie's old phone, messages she had archived, forgotten, and recently rediscovered while preparing. For trial, not one message stood out. "You belong to me. Don't forget that. Ever." Cassie's lawyer read it aloud in court. The room was still. Another message read, "You leave, you lose everything." And you know what I mean. The lawyer didn't even need to explain. The implication was clear. Control, threat, possession, and still Diddy's seat stayed empty. That image, Cassie sitting calmly while an entire courtroom stared at the empty chair where Diddy should have been, became a symbol, a metaphor, and eventually a meme. The chair speaks louder than a man ever could. He had the mic for decades. She just needed one tape. And yet, even with all this chaos, Cassie never raised her voice. She never cried in court. She didn't give long speeches. She let her team speak. She let the truth do the heavy lifting. And that's what made it hit harder. By the end of the day, the judge called a temporary adjournment. This court will reconvene tomorrow to determine the admissibility of additional digital evidence, he said. And as Cassie stood to leave, dozens of spectators inside the courtroom rose silently, not in protest, but in quiet, powerful respect. Outside, the media swarmed. Cassie said nothing, but her lawyer made one statement into the cameras. "Truth is not always loud. Sometimes it whispers, but today it was heard." And back at Diddy's camp, damage control was in full effect. His team released a short statement. "Mr. Combs is currently reviewing the material submitted in court and will respond at the appropriate time. We urge the public not to rush to judgment," but it was already too late for that, because judgment was already happening. In homes, in hearts, on screens. Cassie hadn't just told a story. She started a reckoning, and this was only the second day. The next morning, the courthouse was surrounded, not just by media vans this time, by people, regular people, supporters, survivors, strangers who had never met Cassie but felt like they knew her now. Some carried signs that read, "Believe her." Others just stood in silence, bundled in coats, waiting to catch a glimpse of her walking in. And then something no one expected happened. Diddy showed up. He stepped out of a black SUV, dressed in a muted gray suit, dark shades covering his eyes, lips pressed tight. The crowd gasped. Some shouted, others simply stared. Reporters rushed forward. "Mr. Combs, how do you respond to the recording? Why did you leave yesterday's hearing? Do you plan to testify?" But he didn't say a word, not a single one. Inside the courtroom, the tension was magnetic. Everyone was wondering, what would he do now? As the session resumed, Cassie sat on the left, calm, steady, once again dressed in neutral tones. Diddy sat on the right, his lawyers at attention, whispering rapidly behind masks of confidence. But did he? He looked different. Not angry, not defiant, just shaken. Cassie's lawyer didn't waste time. He stood immediately holding a printed transcript. "Your Honor, we would like to read into the record excerpts from messages exchanged between Mr. Combs and Mrs. Ventura during the time period previously discussed." The judge nodded. And the room braced. "You think you can walk away from me?" one message read. "I made you. Don't embarrass me," said another. The lawyer paused. The room was dead silent. Then one more. "You forget where you came from. I can remind you real fast." As each line was read, Diddy's lawyer objected, claiming lack of full context and emotional manipulation. But the judge allowed it, stating the jury will weigh the significance of the messages. Cassie remained silent, her hands folded, her chin slightly lowered, her expression unchanging. But Diddy's jaw clenched, his fingers tapped the desk in small bursts, a quiet rhythm of discomfort, and then came the moment that shifted everything. Cassie's attorney introduced a witness, someone no one had seen coming, a former house manager, an older woman, mid-50s, soft-spoken but sharp. Her name was kept confidential, but her testimony unforgettable. "I worked in the household for almost 3 years," she said. "I saw a lot. I kept quiet for a long time, but I can't anymore." She described nights of shouting, doors slamming, Cassie crying quietly in hallways, arguments that started over little things and turned into hours-long episodes. He'd say things like, "You think you're special now," or "I can replace you anytime." The jury watched intently. One night I was told to delete security camera footage. When I asked why, I was told it was too emotional for the brand, the court gasped. The judge asked for clarification. "Who told you that?" the lawyer asked. "One of his managers," she replied. "They said it would never see the light of day." And then she said the words that lit up headlines across the country. Cassie wasn't lying. She was surviving. The phrase spread like wildfire. By noon, it was a hashtag. Hola, she survived. Even celebrities who had stayed silent began posting. One R&B legend posted, "We all saw signs. We all stayed quiet. Never again." A famous actress tweeted, "Cassie is doing what most of us never could. She's telling the truth with the whole world watching." But not everyone was supportive. Diddy's team issued a second statement, this time more aggressive. "These claims are part of a coordinated narrative aimed at destroying a legacy. Mr. Combs denies all wrongdoing and maintains his innocence. We look forward to presenting our full case." Still, the internet was unforgiving. Clips from the trial were shared with side-by-side comparisons of old interviews, old footage, and what fans were now calling evidence hiding in plain sight. One viral clip showed Diddy cutting Cassie off mid-interview, telling her to watch what you say. At the time, fans laughed it off. Now it felt chilling. Another moment from a 2012 music video behind the scenes surfaced, showing Cassie wiping tears while Diddy stands off camera, looking irritated. People weren't laughing anymore, they were connecting dots. And that night, Cassie posted a single sentence on her story. "Truth isn't loud, it's just consistent." No photo, no follow-up, just that. By the next day, the media dubbed it Day 3 of the Reckoning. In court, Diddy's lawyer tried to regain ground. He introduced an expert to claim the recordings were potentially spliced and the messages open to interpretation, but the damage was done because perception had shifted. This wasn't just a trial now. This was a moment, a turning point. And Cassie? She was right in the center of it, holding steady while the empire around her trembled. Outside, crowds grew. Inside, silence fell heavier with each testimony. And by the end of day 3, one question echoed everywhere. What else was she holding back? The courtroom was no longer just a room. It had become a stage, a battlefield, a confession booth. And while cameras weren't allowed inside, it didn't matter. Every detail was finding its way out. Witness sketches, live tweet threads, reenactments from bloggers. This trial wasn't just being watched, it was being felt. On day 4, things took a darker, more visual turn. Cassie's legal team introduced what they called personal photographic documentation. It was a sealed folder, thick, worn, and unassuming. But the moment her attorney held it up, the tension in the room tripled. These images, he said carefully, were never intended for public viewing. They were kept as personal documentation of emotional and physical states experienced during the timeline of the relationship in question. The judge nodded, the folder opened, and for a second, just a breath, everything stopped. The images weren't graphic in the traditional sense. No blood, no violence, but they were haunting. Cassie sitting alone in a corner, visibly thinner, her eyes red, hollow, wearing sunglasses indoors, time-stamped. Cassie standing by a window, arms crossed tightly, a look of fear frozen mid-glance. Time-stamped. Cassie holding a cracked phone, the screen lit up with a message from Diddy. "You did this to yourself." Some jurors looked away, others leaned forward. Diddy didn't blink. Cassie didn't look at the screen once. Her lawyer placed the images on the evidence board, one by one. She took these not for court, he said, but for survival, to remind herself she wasn't imagining it. The judge called a brief recess. Outside, the internet lost its mind. News outlets posted censored screenshots. TikTok exploded with analysis videos. Influencers cried on live. One user said, "This is the first time I've seen trauma documented in real time." And while the public processed the weight of the images inside the courthouse, the circle around Diddy began to shrink. Two former assistants were subpoenaed. One refused to testify. The other, she cracked, a soft-spoken woman in her early 30s, dressed in black, with trembling hands and a tight voice. "I worked for him for 11 months, she said. "I left because I couldn't be part of it anymore," she described, whispered. Arguments, locked doors, Cassie crying in silence. But then she said something no one saw coming. "He used to take her phone," she said. "I say it was for her protection, but really, it was so she couldn't talk to anyone." The lawyer asked, "Did you ever witness physical harm?" She paused. Eyes flickered to Cassie. "I didn't see it," she said, "but I saw what it left behind." The judge leaned in. "Clarify," she swallowed. "Bruises on her back, arms, and she always had an excuse. I fell. I ran into the table." But it kept happening. The courtroom was still. Diddy's attorney objected. The judge allowed it. And outside, the fans turned louder. Celebrities started issuing statements. Carefully but clearly a list. Artists unfollowed Diddy on social media. A major brand quietly removed his face from a campaign. One radio host said live on air, "This ain't gossip anymore. This is damage, and it's real." Diddy's team responded with a carefully worded message. Mr. Combs strongly denies any allegations of abuse. The relationship in question was complex but consensual. He urges the public to wait for the facts. But it was too late for damage control, because facts were being spoken by voices long ignored. And then came the pressure. Industry insiders leaked that music execs were distancing themselves. A major music streaming platform removed his solo playlist from the homepage. A longtime collaborator posted, then quickly deleted, "You can't keep building while burying people underneath you." Meanwhile, Cassie kept showing up. Same courtroom, same steady pace, same silence. And on day 5, her team made one final move. They submitted audio logs from a private therapist, sessions Cassie had requested be recorded for reference. In one, her voice cracks. "Sometimes I dream about running away, just disappearing. And in a dream, I'm happy. But then I wake up, and he's right there." The therapist's notes confirmed patterns of fear, control, and isolation. Clients show signs of emotional trauma consistent with prolonged psychological abuse. One note read, "Diddy's lawyer pushed back, calling it opinion-based and unverifiable." The judge allowed the logs. And then for the first time since the audio leak, Diddy spoke in court. He stood, voice calm but icy. "Your Honor, I've been vilified without a chance to speak." The judge allowed him to continue briefly. "I never hurt her," he said. "Not in the way she's claiming. We argued, yes. It was a toxic relationship. But I did not abuse her. I loved her." Cassie didn't react, not even a blink. And when he sat down, the room was colder than before. Because words, especially now, weren't enough. Not against the weight of what had been seen, heard, and felt. Outside, protesters had arrived, holding signs, chanting Cassie's name. A new chant was born. Her silence kept him rich. Her voice will end it. And inside, the judge gave one final instruction before adjourning for deliberation. This court acknowledges the sensitivity of the material presented. We remind the jury to weigh the facts, not the noise. But the noise was everywhere. And as Cassie walked out of the courthouse that day, flanked by her legal team, something surreal happened. The crowd didn't cheer, they didn't scream, they just clapped, softly, steadily. A wave of quiet power that followed her all the way to the car. And online, a single message trended above all. She didn't just break, Her silence. She broke the cycle. The final day didn't feel like a trial. It felt like a reckoning. The jury returned after just 5 hours of deliberation. Not rushed, not hesitant, just focused. Their faces tight. Their eyes heavier than they had been all week. The courtroom was packed. Press badges, production crew, observers, and far in the back, former insiders, people who once worked with Diddy, some of whom hadn't been seen in public in years, silently watching. The judge entered, called for order. The clerk stood. Has the jury reached a verdict? The foreperson nodded. We have. The clerk unfolded the paper and read, not guilty on counts of physical abuse due to lack of physical evidence, but they are liable for emotional trauma, psychological manipulation, and coercive control. Gas filled the room. Cassie didn't flinch. Diddy leaned back slightly. One deep breath. But no outburst this time. No walkout. Just stillness. The judge thanked the jury. Then, I turned to Cassie. You have demonstrated remarkable composure and clarity during this process, he said. This court acknowledges the impact you've made. And with that, the gavel fell. But outside, the real story was only beginning as news broke, social media erupted, headlines hit instantly, jury finds Diddy liable for emotional abuse. Cassie wins courtroom battle, industry reels from fallout, a voice finally heard. Some fans celebrated, others cried. A few influencers live-streamed reactions, voices shaking with emotion. But what happened next shocked even the most. Cynical observers. Hours after the verdict, 3 other women released anonymous statements to the press, claiming they too had experienced manipulation, emotional abuse, and brand weaponization while in relationships with Diddy. Their faces weren't revealed. Their stories weren't detailed, but their timing intentional and powerful. A tidal wave had begun. Within 24 hours, one major music platform suspended playlist promotions of Diddy's catalog. A legacy festival quietly removed his name from a commemorative lineup. A popular podcast retracted a previously aired interview stating, "We no longer stand by the image we helped paint." But amid all this chaos, Cassie stayed silent until the next morning when she posted one single video. No music, no edits, just her voice. This was never about revenge. It was about truth. It was about knowing I wasn't crazy. I wasn't weak. I was surviving, she paused. I want to thank every person who listened, who believed me, and who stood behind me when I couldn't stand on my own. The internet lit up again. Believe Cassie must shoe in so our truth wins, and then the quiet power move, she updated her bio free, nothing else. And while some expected Diddy to retaliate, to respond with a video, a statement, a track, what came instead was silence. No new post, no live, just the quiet fading of noise from someone who had once controlled every beat of the conversation. And that silence, it spoke louder than anything. The industry responded. One artist wrote, "He ran the culture for decades. Now he can't even show his face." Another posted, "She did what most of us dream of. She told her story without needing approval." And the impact kept rippling. A survivor support group reported a 43% spike in calls. A major news outlet named Cassie's case one of the most culturally transformative trials of the decade. And through it all, Cassie kept walking forward. No interviews, no press tour, just presence. She was seen exiting a studio 2 weeks later, smiling, no security in sight, just peace. And that's when people realized she hadn't just escaped something toxic. She had rebuilt something sacred, herself and the court. It didn't just validate her pain, it helped others find language for theirs. So while the media moved on to newer scandals, deeper headlines, and louder stories, one truth remained. One truth remained. She didn't need the last word because she had already said the only one that mattered. Enough. Anyone who's ever been told to stay quiet, to stay small, to stay silent for the sake of someone else's power. This wasn't about fame. This wasn't about drama. This was about survival. And as Diddy's empire starts to crack piece by piece, Cassie's strength is building something even greater. Respect, redemption, and a narrative she finally owns. But now we turn to you. What do you think? Was justice served in this case? Will Cassie's victory open the doors for others to speak out? Or is this just the beginning of something much, much bigger? We want to hear from you. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Was the verdict enough? Do you believe Diddy will ever respond fully? And how did that audio make you feel when you heard it? Make sure to hit that like button if Cassie's strength inspired you today. Subscribe for more exclusive updates as this story continues to unfold. And trust us, there's more coming. And most importantly, share this video with someone who needs to hear this story. Because this time, the voice that was ignored became the voice that shook the room. And the world listened. We'll see you next time.